Hello and welcome back to the studio. I am Luke Renner. I am just becoming aware of something that is going on today. This is November 18th, 2023, and I have a friend online, Rebecca Drumsta. She and I do a lot of work in the healing from religious trauma space. She talks a lot about that. She herself was part of a cult growing up. I don't know that I really think of myself as being part of a cult. We'll talk about that more later. My wife was very much in a cult. That probably makes it a little harder for me to say mine was, because what I was in experientially was very different from what she was in. I'm not trying to get stuck in the compare and contrast, the sort of pointless game that we do. But anyway, that's another conversation. Anyway, Rebecca was talking online and brought it to my attention that today, November 18th, 2023, this is International Cult Awareness Day. And what's interesting about this particular Cult Awareness Day is that 45 years ago, over 900 individuals were victims of a mass murder-suicide. These folks were members of the People's Temple cult, and the event is most commonly known as the Jonestown Massacre. So I don't know if you've heard about this. Colloquially, you may have heard the phrase when describing someone who is like caught up in groupthink and maybe is acting against their own best interest. You might have heard the phrase, they drank the Kool-Aid. So that's referring back to the Jonestown Massacre. There was a fruit-flavored drink, and it was laced with poison, and over 900 individuals, members of this cult, were all convinced in some way, shape, or form to drink this and commit mass suicide. Now, I've got a really interesting thing to tell you about the Jonestown Massacre, but first I'm going to go through 10 signs that you may be in contact with, either in the early stages or you may be fully wrapped up with a cult. So there are 10 things you can look out for. These are not the only 10 things, but these are 10 things to look out for. Number one, you want to look out for authoritarian leadership. Oftentimes, the authority figure will be very charismatic. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're super likable. It doesn't mean that you like them. It doesn't mean that you're best friends, but they're charismatic in the sense that they exude energy. The whole weight of the organization tends to sort of like wrap around this charismatic figure. So authoritarian leadership is the first thing to look out for. Number two thing to look out for is isolation from friends and family. And there's a reason further down on this list why isolating us from friends and family is almost always a tactic that a cult movement is going to get to, usually pretty quickly. Are you being asked to isolate from family or friends? Are you being told like they can't understand you anymore, or they're trying to drag you down, or they're not the chosen ones, whatever the story may be around that? If you have an organization that's trying to shoehorn its way between you and your family or you and your friends, that is a warning sign that you may be involved in something that is or is very close to a cult. Number three is control over information. It's very rare in a cult situation that you'll be bringing in lots of information and they'll be saying, oh, we're glad to hear that. That's great. Oftentimes, if you bring information into the group or that authority figure or their minions, their sort of leadership team, will descend upon whatever's being brought in and a lot of times critique and tear it apart. They may just, without much pomp and circumstance, they may just say it is wholesale bad because it didn't come from us. But there is a sense of controlling the information. Number four, mind control techniques, right? So cults will use techniques like manipulation, coercion, indoctrination, things like this to influence and control your mind and how you think. So if you find that the organization, the religion, or the group that you're a part of has gotten you to do a lot of just like second guessing yourself, or maybe you're past second guessing, maybe you just don't take anything you think or say seriously, that could be the result of having mind control techniques being employed on you. So that's number four. Number five, financial exploitation. Very commonly, when these groups have already gotten you to cut off contact with family or cut off contact with friends, one of the next things they're going to want to do, because it's all about taking maximum control over their followers, over their constituents. And one major way that you can be controlled is if the organization can get a hold of your finances. They can tell you what to do with your money. They may have you giving all of your money to the organization, or it may still be in your direct control, but they're telling you what to do with it. Number 6, unrealistic promises. They're saying for absolutely certain that things are going to happen for you, which honestly no one ever anywhere has been able to promise. Whether that's you're going to make it into the one group that makes it to heaven in the afterlife, or you're going to be insanely wealthy, or you're going to have all of your sicknesses cured, or some sort of special appointment from God is there for you. There tends to be unrealistic promises coming out of cult groups. Number 7, fear and intimidation. Now, fear and intimidation is really sort of the bedrock of what makes cult thinking work, right? It's one thing to use fear and intimidation to get you into the cult. Be afraid of what's coming. Be afraid of not being on the winning team. Be afraid of the devil, or be afraid of New World Order, or whatever the case may be. Fear and intimidation are often used to get people in, but then once you're in, the fear and intimidation is generally, it's maintained or even ratcheted up to keep you in place. So if you feel constantly afraid or constantly intimidated, if you feel like you can't speak out, you can't speak up, there's a strong possibility that fear and intimidation is being heavily employed, and that could be the sign that you're part of a cult. Number 8, lack of personal autonomy. Now, lack of personal autonomy is everything, right? Because the person in charge, the authority figure, or their minions, their leadership team, ultimately all power wants to be funneled up to the head, right? And so anything that looks like you having a valid idea, or you having power, or you having resolve, or you having a voice, the tendency is going to be to want to squish that, unless you are using your voice to speak power and support toward the leadership. So this is very common, where if you're having your own ideas and saying things that either have nothing to do with the aims of the cult, or they may be questioning the aims of the cult, then you're going to see people try to squish that. But if you're saying our leader is great, our movement is great, if you start to say, for example, prophesy and say things that really go along with the scripts of the organization, then you may find that your autonomy feels like it's being lifted up. But keep in mind, it's only because you're saying what they're saying. And so that's actually not autonomy. It's not your personal voice. Number 9 is rapid change in identity. And this is what goes back to what I said in number 2, which is isolation from family and friends. When you're connected in a healthy way to family and friends, people in your community, and you start to experience the rapid change that a cult will often make happen in your life, those family and friends will be able to say objectively, like, you're changing a lot lately. So that's another reason why the cult is not going to want you to have these objective people in your life who actually care about you, because those are the kinds of people who are going to speak up and say, hey, we're seeing this change. That's specifically why cults don't want people in your life who have objectivity and who genuinely care about you, because those people will point to the changes that they see. And specifically, cults need to overtake you quickly. If it happens too slowly, then there's all these opportunities where you may say, you know what, this just isn't for me, I'm out of here. So there tends to be kind of an overwhelm that happens that is at the heart and soul of this rapid change. That's part of the way it hooks you. And then number 10 is this us versus them mentality. This happens in religion, whether or not you consider your religious movement to be a cult or not. The truth of the matter is, this is common between cults and religions. There's this othering that happens. We're the ones with the truth. We're the ones on the winning side. We're the ones who will be saved. And everybody else constitutes the other, them. Us versus them. So those are just 10 things. Like I said, there can be others, but those are 10 that you can look out for, which may be an indication that you are either stepping foot into a cult or you may have been in one for a while. Now, I promised you some interesting information related to today, with this being International Cult Awareness Day and the 45th year anniversary of the Jonestown Massacre. As it turns out, I am actually related by marriage to Jim Jones, the leader of Jonestown. I have a cousin, and I asked her, she does a lot of ancestry work on my mother's side of the family. I said, is it true? Am I related to Jim Jones through marriage? She says, yes, that is true. Grandma Moser's cousin married Jim Jones's aunt. It goes Grandma Moser back, so I'm going back down the family tree here, to Lemuel Austin and Addie Moore. And then Addie Moore comes from Sarah F. Hollingsworth and Francis Moore. Francis Moore's brother was Daniel Heenan Moore, who was the father of Fred Moore. And Fred Moore married Emma Jones, Jim Jones's aunt, or aunt, however you say that. So how interesting is that? International Cult Awareness Day, and 45 years ago today commemorates the Jonestown Massacre, to which I am oddly connected through marriage. Small world. Thanks for joining me. I hope this has been a little bit enlightening, maybe borderline interesting. Until I see you again, be safe, stay curious, give grace, make love, and be truly alive. Thanks for watching.